Although the Oklahoma State football brand has taken a little bit of a hit this season, that's okay because the Princeton of the Prairie has made its return, and the Oklahoma State agricultural and mechanical Aggies hasn't lost a game in almost 100 years.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we are brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Get squared away today with Game Time Tickets. Meanwhile, we shift into the conversation of the best uniforms in the land. By far, this Saturday will be in Stillwater, America. These might be top 5 easy, top 3 potentially, maybe one of the greatest Oklahoma State Cowboy uniforms of all time. And of course, we're going to reach back to the 1900s through 1922 to pull this inspiration out. A lot of Cowboy country is aware that we were at one point in time called the Princeton of the Prairie, and we stole the ideas from Princeton Tigers, the color scheme, the whole 9 yards, because we had a faculty member whose father was a very highly prominent member at Princeton. So that's where we got the colors from. And initially in 1900, we were the Tigers. We eventually adapted that into the Oklahoma A&M Aggies before adopting it again into the Cowboys, which is obviously where we stand now. That is what the O and the A is going to stand for, Oklahoma Agricultural and Mechanical Aggies. Ironically, the OA club ended up becoming the O club, which a lot of you are going to be familiar with. But for those of you who are not familiar, the reason that we're digging back to some of these is because we're celebrating a 125-year history of Oklahoma State football. And even though we didn't really excel in football for quite some time, nonetheless, it is pretty cool to go back and talk about guys like Ed Parry, who was a coach in 1908. And there is pictures of him running around rocking that A logo that you're seeing now on the helmet. And then you fast forward into somebody 1909, 1914, who had almost a 700 winning percentage in Paul Davis, who was very instrumental, but he was also football coach, basketball coach, and athletic director all at the same time, which is basically how Oklahoma A&M was able to upgrade over the course of the years. It didn't become until really Pappy Waldorf in the early 1929 through 1930 time frame before we had a coach that wasn't really involved with any of the playing aspects. Before that, we also had John Mouthbeck, who was a legendary Cowboy from early on in the day. And you're taking some of these iterations like Lynn Pappy Waldorf winning 3 conference titles and John Malbeck winning a conference title himself. And then you roll it all into what this season has become, and this is the inspiration that we may have needed. This might be able to carry the weight for homecoming, America's brightest, biggest, best homecoming by far. With these new uniforms, this might potentially help us build some momentum into this night game as we take on Arizona State. The historical connotations behind these uniforms are absolutely phenomenal. I'm sure, like many of you, I cannot wait to have the OA helmet, mini helmet, or whatever for sale, because it might be one of the tops all time. I'm a big fan of the Buck and Bronc, old school Buck and Bronc. I'll never really subside my love for that. But I love the idea of these uniforms. It would be great to see Garrett Rangel out there, Mr. Long Sleeves himself. The same could be said about Nick Martin. The guys who excel in the long sleeves, unfortunately, will not be playing in this game. Who will be is Ollie Gordon. And you guys know I have made my ideas felt about Ollie Gordon. I think it's absolutely phenomenal, and it's amazing for himself and the university, as him being an ambassador for the university, to continue playing football, knowing that he's hurting his draft stock to some degree. But on top of that, we also have Brennan Presley. Is this going to be the game that he breaks the Rashawn Woods reception record? He got 15 receptions last week, so getting up there into that 15 to 17 range is a possibility, which would inch him closer to surpassing that Rashawn Woods record that I think most of us would like to see him get. If there's going to be a shining light throughout the course of the season, it might have to go down to some of the individual athletes on the field. Of course, we'll always remember what Nick Martin was able to do if he is not able to come back the next season. Same is going to be said for Ollie Gordon. And of course, Britton Presley might be one of the most underrated receivers in Oklahoma State history, because a lot of us, talk about some of the big heavy hitters, the Des Bryants, the Tylen Wallaces, the Hartley Dykes, the James Washingtons, Justin Blackmons of the world. Of course, we talk about all of those guys, but slot receiver hasn't really been something that we've had a lot of NFL success with. Therefore, it may not be something that is highlighted all that often. But we will always remember Brennan Presley, just like we will always remember to some degree what Alan Bowman was able to provide for Oklahoma State last season. Going on that epic run at the end of the year, culminating with the Big 12 title game that obviously didn't go in our favor. This was, in my opinion, the most anticipatory season of all time. I don't know of any other time we've returned 20 starters in this percentage of the roster, but it is what it is. We are where we are. And for the remainder of the season, whether we make a bowl game or not, we all need to just take a mental image of every time we get to see Brennan Presley and Ollie Gordon and Nick Martin and Colin Oliver on the field doing the daggone thing. From a wide receiver perspective, outside of Brennan Presley, it is kind of a crying shame that we have somebody like Dejon Stribling that is also getting underlooked. Mike Gundy did mention the other day in his press conference that Brennan Presley should be an All-American. I think that goes without question. If you're about to surpass Rashawn Woods on an all-time record list, and Rashawn Woods was a certified, bona fide All-American, to me, it just makes a lot of sense. To fall down in line of the great Oklahoma State wide receivers, Brennan Presley is definitely going to be up there. And as it pertains to Ollie Gordon at running back, even though this season hasn't gone very well, the fact that he's getting hit in the backfield almost 53% of the time is not an indictment on any of his ability or inability to get things going this season. This could be a game, even though we know he's banged up and we know that there's a potential that he's putting his NFL career in jeopardy. It's more than admirable, and it raises Ollie Gordon's stock in Cowboy country, to me, just an extra degree, because I don't think anybody would hold it against him, especially even from a donor perspective, if he were to make a logical decision, a professional decision. And I would imagine that a lot of us would stand behind him if he were to make that decision. But he's already said multiple times, just because the season's going the way that it is, it doesn't mean that you essentially quit, right? I don't know that I'd classify his particular situation as quitting, but nonetheless, he's going to do the daggone thing, which takes him up another notch on the all-time Cowboy list alongside Brennan Presley. And hopefully we get to see some more Nick Martin, because after 140 tackle season and being number 2 in the country for most of the season before his injury this year already, that combination of him and Trey Rucker was probably the highlight of watching the defense play football after Colin Oliver's injury. There hasn't been a lot of highlights defensively. We've done pretty decent at turnovers, but outside of that, it's been a lot of head-scratching moments throughout the course of the season. So regardless of what happens for the rest of the year, and regardless of what happens at homecoming, I do like this move with the uniforms and the ode back to the 1900s and the Tigers before being the Aggies. And hopefully that we're able to capitalize on this from like a marketing style of standpoint, because kind of like the Folds of Honor uniforms, that might be my number one, the Cowboy Battalion jerseys. They might be my favorite. This might be right up there. Now, I will say the one thing that they probably could have done significantly better was to also do something with the jerseys, either the old A with, or the old O with the Aggies above it, something to that effect would have been pretty cool. But nonetheless, this look is at least going to have us winning in the uniform game before the game starts. And you already know, with the momentum and it being homecoming and it being a night game and it being, Arizona State's the second trip to Stillwater in the last few years, although there's going to be a little bit of a revenge factor on their hands, the momentum that we're building here hopefully is able to carry over, because I would imagine that there is an extra tick up in excitement level as well for this. Just like you should tick up your excitement level if you're going to be at the stadium to watch this phenomenal jersey roll out there. Make sure you get your tickets today. Whenever you're looking for tickets for almost anything, even if it's not sports related, you can also get squared away with music, comedy, theater, and other amazing events near you. Game Time Tickets is the right get for you. Game Time has the new feature called the Game Time Picks, which makes it much easier for you to find the best tickets in the game without searching through thousands of unnecessary tickets. The best thing about this Game Time, in my opinion, is the panoramic seat view. There's a lot of chances for you to not get the right seat, especially if you're getting out off of a different, third-party style of entity. With Game Time, you're not going to have that issue. And with Game Time, you also get the lowest price guarantee, which means they'll credit you back 110% of the difference. And the ticket coverage is the best in the game with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. Make sure that you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Make sure you create that account, redeem that code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today because you already know what time it is. It's game time. From game time to headset gate time, the communication between the coaches and the quarterbacks or the green dot guys on defense, it has been put out recently in multiple reports that there's an issue there. And there's the ability for other frequencies to pick up some of the conversations. Now, as it specifically looks towards Oklahoma State, I don't know that it's super applicable for us because a lot of us teams in the league have played each other for the most part, and some of the games have looked very reminiscent of the same team's previous game. So if this was something that was running rampant, I would imagine that you wouldn't have any undefeated teams in the league whatsoever, because if they're able to read or reach the communication between the booth and the quarterback or the booth and the middle linebacker, I don't know that you have a lot of time to make the necessary adjustments. But even if you were to be able to do that, because you can talk through the headset up until 15 seconds. After 15 seconds is on the clock, you no longer have the ability to, communicate with the quarterback. So if that was really a massive advantage, in my opinion, everybody would have a loss in almost every conference. Because if this is something that stretches beyond the Big 12, then why do we not have more undefeated teams? Right? I don't think that BYU and Iowa State are just head and shoulders better than everybody else in the conference, and nor would I say the same about Kansas State either. But nonetheless, you have a couple undefeated teams, and if there was headset communication stealing going on, I have a feeling that nobody would be undefeated, because there's no way that it benefits Iowa State and BYU to a bigger degree than Oklahoma State or a Utah. I think this will be interesting to see at the end of the year what this turns up being. Another layer that will be interesting is to see what kind of consideration the NCAA is going to get in making decisions on this. Because, of course, it has something to do with the NCAA, collegiate football, but we also know that the NCAA has lost a decent amount of leverage over the last few years. And I also think that, there's a possibility that the NCAA could cease to exist, although it does look less and less likely, even though somebody like Greg Sankey from the SEC has mentioned it multiple times. If it was something that they wanted to do, they would probably be doing it. But there's so many little intricate details involved with the NCAA that go beyond just sports and grades and academics and all of that they have to pay attention to, that even a third-party style entity probably wouldn't be able to narrow down all of the very, minute, minuscule details to the same degree the NCAA has. So for all of the deficiencies that the NCAA and the biases that they clearly operate with, I don't know that it's going to change a whole lot. So it'll be kind of a interesting case study to see how they handle it, to see how much pull they have, to see what kind of ability they're going to have to remedy the situation, and if this has lingering effects moving forward. Now, what'll be the biggest surprise after all at the end of the season is if it was rampant, right? If this was widespread, and furthermore, how many coaches were privy to this information? Now, if it was as widespread as it could potentially end up being, then to me, it would be kind of crazy that nobody was talking about it being a thing, right? Like, for example, if Mike Gundy or anybody else knew that the other team had the ability to kind of tap into the headset, and then they knew that the other team was making adjustments around that 15-second time frame before the microphone kind of cuts out, then how many teams did it affect? I don't think, again, this has any effect on a team like Oklahoma State, but let's say that there's a Kansas State. Let's say you have a situation where you have one loss, and there's direct evidence that in that one loss, there was some of these headset, breaking into style of issues. Then what happens to that one loss, right? Can you retroactively go back and do something about it? I guess from the NCAA's standpoint, you could. But that also goes back to how much grounds do they have? How much standing do they have? How much ability are they going to be able to exercise in making sure that this is not only an issue that's somewhat compartmentalized to specific conferences or specific teams or maybe even specific locations. Hopefully that's what it is. Because college football, other than the NIL craziness and the illegal recruiting tampering issues that have been a problem for 100 years, right, to some degree, will likely always be a little bit of an issue. So when you have some things like that there aren't really good guardrails on, that the NCAA has dropped the ball on, is the NCAA going to drop the ball on this one as well? And if they're not going to drop the ball, how much authority do they have to remedy the situation? Could this be an instance where it all goes away and you can no longer be as communicative with your quarterback or your middle linebacker? That'll be some of the interesting stuff that comes out of this, on top of how widespread was it? How many teams did it affect? Because I don't think, again, it has a lot of effect on a team that's 0-5 in conference play, but it might have an effect on a team that only has one loss. And if that one loss is against somebody that may be tied into all of this, it is pretty interesting. It is pretty crazy. And I guess if you really wanted to stretch, you could say in Cowboy country, maybe that's one of the reasons we're having so much difficulty. I don't necessarily buy it, but I guess you could see it being used to, at least in some capacity. Hopefully not, though, right? All right, let's check in because it's hoops action. And with the struggles we've had in football, it might behoove all of us to get a little pumped up about the Steve Lutz version of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, as they were able to take down SMU in a somewhat impressive fashion in a recent charity game, 89-78. The Steve Lutz era kicked off with Bryce Thompson dropping 25 points, hitting 5 of 5 from three-point range, and leading the Cowboys to this victory. The Cowboys were able to, finish around the rim here and there, even without having a true big. Abu Ousmane from Xavier, he did lead the team in rebounds with 8. He also had 3 block shots. SMU wasn't a really big ball club, right? So whenever we face a team that has a true big, the small ball lineup may be slightly problematic, but it was not problematic in this game. The hustle and relentless effort was precisely what we needed to see. Khalil Brantley was able to chip in with 5 assists. We had, 8 turnovers compared to their 7, which equaled more fast break opportunities. Arturo Dean was able to chip in with some fast break points and some assists. And we also had Robert Jennings, the Texas Tech forward, step in there and help facilitate some fast breaks. It does appear as though this is going to be more of a run and gun style of team, which is not a bad thing, because half-court sets last season were problematic. And even though we do have a lot of new faces on the roster, to some degree, Steve Lutz is still trying to work with some of the guys that were here the previous season. Now, whenever you mention somebody like a Jamiron Keller, he did in fact go 2 of 4 from the field and 2 of 3 from 3-point range. And then you had somebody like Marcellus Avery, a.k.a. Chi-Chi, chip in 14 points as well. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to kind of lean a lot on Bryce Thompson. If Bryce Thompson can put up 24 points on a consistent basis, then we're not going to have very many issues whatsoever. Throughout the course of the game, we shot over 50% from three-point range. It's been a long time since we've been able to say that, as well as putting up 44.4% from the field and 70.4% from the charity stripe. I think you could all agree that the charity stripe needs a little bit of work, but that 50% from three-point range it's a sight for sore eyes. And it's a sight that we hopefully can continue to see more and more of, just like J.C. Hoyt and the Cowgirls might have a squad that can do a little bit of damage after taking down Southern Nazarene 81-46 in Gallagher-Iba Arena. Stacey Jones, the Mercer transfer, was able to lead the way with 22 points. And, of course, you have the consummate professional in Annegret Aussie back with 16 points and being the sharpshooter from deep that we always knew we'd need. And then you have a new addition in Macy Heward, Brock Heward's daughter, pitched in another 14 points. And then Alexia Smith, the Virginia transfer, had 13 as well. This is a team that is going to have a lot of capabilities whenever you look at the shooting. Losing Leo Garzon is obviously going to be a little bit of an issue. But at one point in time, we outscored the Crimson Storm 27-8, behind 8 points from Aussie and 6 points from both Smith and Jones in a very quick succession of minutes. And then we closed the third quarter up 57-35. And then we were able to see a little bit from Praise as well to chip in alongside Jones and Smith. The Cowgirls shot 46% from the floor and now have the opportunity to make a statement on this season for J.C. Hoyt and the Cowgirls. We should be considerably better than last year, but it's going to be difficult to replicate what we did 2 years previous, just like it's going to be difficult for the Cowgirls soccer squad to replicate the performance they had against Cincinnati to somehow stay alive. This was a game where we showed up unprepared, flat-footed, kind of just didn't look right. And we were down 2-0 in the first 13 minutes. We didn't score our first goal until the 78th minute. And then we scored another goal right after that and another goal right after that to take a 3-2 W to get it done in literally the last couple minutes of the game. The Morris family has a lot to be proud of in this one because both of their girls were able to have pretty phenomenal games. Whether it's Alex Morris or Reagan Morris getting her first goal as a Cowgirl, there will be much, much more to look forward to. And we do play again Saturday. Can Grace Gordon, the goalkeeper that might have the opportunity to catch some AD French, is she going to be able to stay hot? Are we going to be able to shake off the rust from, the way the game started? It's going to be a difficult proposition because now we have to take on BYU on Saturday, and BYU has a lot of talent. They're a higher seeded team, but we have the ability to win this game. A lot of it, stems from Gordon. Imagine if we would have had Gordon for years. She would have dominated all of AD French's records. But 1 year is better than no years, and especially when you are this daggone good. So the Cowgirls are going to be able to make a little bit of a run in the Big 12 tournament. After 78 minutes of flat-footed play, we were able to respond very well late. And then finally, before we skedaddle on off of here, unfortunately, David Taylor took the L to Abdul Rashid Shajalayev, but he will still have the opportunity to wrestle for a bronze medal. What are the implications going to be if David Taylor can bring home a bronze medal for the Cowboys wrestling room? I think a lot of us have a lot of anticipation for this season, at least giving Iowa a run for their money at the 2 spot. Maybe we could catch lightning in a bottle and have the opportunity to creep up towards Penn State at number 1, even though that point-scoring team is pretty crazy. We'll have our work cut out for us. But Cowboy basketball and Cowgirl basketball both get ready to set to take on some more games in just a few days. So we'll stick with that, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about the Cowboys and Cowgirls beginning the season outside of exhibition play with W's. Until then, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. Like it if you liked it. I'm going to thank. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast with people out there. You know what to do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. You are the everything. I appreciate you. All righty, y'all. That's all we're going to have. Later, taters.